Let's start right away with Jana, who is not only the co-founder of Mitra, here based out of Berlin, but also Ginsep ambassador. So welcome, Jana.
Thank you, Julian. Happy to be here today.
Great, happy to have you with us. First of all, do you want to give us a brief background of Mitra and what you do and what you've been working on and since when, and yeah, your role in it?
Yes, sure. So Mitra is an online platform for internationals who want to start a career here in Germany. And I started this business together with my co-founder, Christoph, about 4 years ago. And in the beginning, we were mainly a consultancy for companies who wanted to hire from India. So that was the main expertise we started with. And we came across a lot of challenges for both candidates and companies in these recruitment processes. And that's why we decided to launch a website platform for internationals about a year ago, where we are trying to provide as much information as possible. We run an English job board where candidates can look for jobs. We run a great community with a lot of events where we invite companies to talk about the opportunities they offer and so on. So it's all directed at making this whole career start a bit easier here, and also at connecting companies and candidates. So that's what it's all about.
Okay, great. Today we've heard a lot already about the need of international talent or foreign talent here in Germany. And now also the question to you. So I asked every speaker kind of, but now also the question to you. What's the current situation? Well, in Germany, but then also for the Indian candidates for the German job market.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question that probably, a lot of candidates are thinking about in particular, right? And from what I've seen during the pandemic, it was, of course, a bit difficult to find jobs, but particularly in the past few months, I can definitely see an upswing. So I think the hiring processes have picked up again. And I think there's definitely a difference between candidates who are already located in Germany, but probably have an international Indian background, and candidates who are still abroad. So I would say, yes, of course, for candidates who are located abroad, it has always been a bit of a bigger challenge to find something, but it's possible. So because the visa processes are open for candidates who come here on a work permit or blue card, right? So yeah, recruitment is going on, but there are some hurdles to take, I would say. Yeah.
And what are the candidates, from what background are the candidates that are usually reaching out to us? I mean, reaching out to you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we do mainly have candidates with a tech background, tech or software developers, engineering, and so on. And I think that's the case because for these kind of candidates, they belong to a group of people who have a shortage profession, right? So a profession that's really in demand here in Germany. So I think for all these domains like software development, engineering, natural sciences, and so on, it's a bit easier to find a job here as an international candidate. So yeah, those are the kind of profiles we get. So as a candidate who has this kind of technical background, I think it's a bit just easier to find something, even if you're located abroad. Companies will be willing to relocate you, and I think there are great services for that. So that's definitely possible. For candidates who have more of a business background or something different, I would say it's definitely a bit more challenging. So it gets easier once we are here, then you can get in touch with companies directly and build a network. But we have very few cases of people who have, I also have a business background, but who have a business background and not a developer or engineering or other background, or very special expertise. So, yeah.
It's more difficult because the demand is less, or because of the recognition of the certificates and all?
I would say it's more difficult because the demand is less. So it just takes more time to find a job. And often, for instance, I don't know, sometimes I do get sales profiles, for instance, and for sales roles, it's you need to speak German in many cases, right? Because you will be in a client-facing role, and then German is still the main spoken language. So it's just more challenging to find a job that fits to a candidate who has an international background. But it's possible. It really depends on the company. So I do see cases where it still happens. It's just easier with a different profile.
Okay. Exactly, because that question I'm kind of asking everyone here, but we want to talk more about the processes, right? So what are the main challenges that the candidates should be prepared for during the application processes? So assuming they have undergone the interview and they are selected, or what should the candidates be prepared for now?
Yeah, so I think the main challenge already starts even before the interview, because we work a lot with candidates directly and try to support them. And I think a lot of candidates are struggling with landing an interview because the application processes are just a bit different in Germany. And then also, people often don't have a personal network here, right? So I think that's the main challenge in the beginning. So it's helpful to do some research on application standards and what companies expect from candidates here. And the minute a candidate gets through the whole interview process, I think then that's already a very, it's a success, right? Because very few people make it. And then of course, there's a whole negotiation, which I think candidates sometimes struggle with, because it takes some time to research market value and understand how salary payment and benefits and everything work here. So I think that's always the first hurdle. And then the second one, and that's the most challenging part, is definitely to get the whole visa and relocation done. So that's, I think everyone who has moved to Germany or who is dealing with visa processes knows that it's a headache sometimes. So that's something where I think it's just important for candidates to be prepared for the fact that, it takes a lot of paperwork, it takes a lot of time to get everything done. And then even once the visa is done, if you move to Berlin, for instance, there are other challenges following that, right? Like finding housing, for instance. So all these things that come with relocation are definitely a challenge.
What are all the other things besides housing, of course, in Berlin?
Yeah.
Opening bank accounts is what I hear, for example, and of course you need housing where you can get Anmeldung, you need to get registered. So what are the other problems that the applicants are facing then here?
Yeah, so I would say, so it starts when you apply for the visa, because you need a health insurance. So then that's often a bit confusing. But if you have a visa agency, like Localize, I think, following after my talk, then it's easy to take care of that. But that's a bit confusing to understand how the whole health and social security system works, right? Then you need a bank account, as you mentioned. That's quite difficult to open a bank account. Flat search is definitely very time consuming. So right now I see that as one of the biggest hurdles after the visa for candidates who are moving to hubs like Berlin or Hamburg or Munich in particular. And then following that, I think usually that already takes a lot of time, but then it comes to, building a local network and getting your paperwork done that follows your arrival in Germany, like your Anmeldung and so on. And I can see that that's also very challenging, because a lot of it is taking place in German language, all the contracts you need to sign and so on. So it helps to have some support by the company or friends or, So.
Okay.
A lot of paperwork.
A lot of paperwork, And I can also imagine if it's a system that you're not familiar with, and then it's in another language, then it's creating also this kind of worry, this uncertainty, right? You don't know what it is that you're signing on, how it works. So it doesn't give you a very good feeling. So what can be done, maybe from Mitra's side? What are you doing, or what can be done to overcome these kind of challenges, but also these insecurities from the job seekers or from the applicants' end?
Yeah, so I think from the applicant's end, it's definitely to do some research. I think there are really great podcasts out there which you can listen to by expats who have, or people who have moved to Germany, who talk about these topics that they came across in their daily life when they moved here. Like you mentioned, contracts, for instance. So I always, I hear that all the time, that it's so annoying for people that here, when you sign a contract, it usually has a binding length of 2 years, right? When you sign up for a phone contract, internet, utilities and all that stuff. So it's helpful if you listen to podcasts. I think, doing research, watching, like looking at videos on YouTube, like we have a YouTube channel as well, where we talk about the career part and the work aspect, like, how will you receive your salary? What kind of deductions will you be facing, and so on. So I think there are a lot of great resources out there, and it also definitely helps to maybe join some communities. So we have a very vibrant international community in Berlin. They are very, like, if you don't know people personally, there are great networks. You can just join a Facebook group and get to meet people. So it's, I think that definitely helps. And the other part is if you are aware of the fact that, okay, this will be a challenging step where I need help and I don't know anyone in the city where I'm moving to, I think it also helps to consider this when you negotiate your job, or maybe to ask your future employer if they provide any benefits, if they can provide you with a relocation package. I do see many cases where that happens, so companies are willing to pay for it, depending on the role, of course, but that's a great relief for candidates, because then they can spend more time on getting settled instead of dealing with the visa stuff or paperwork all the time. Yeah. Okay.
Now that you're mentioning already the recruiters or the company side, that would be also my question. So we talked earlier to Sukanya from a tech recruiter here, and but also from your side, what are the hurdles also now for the recruiters here in Germany?
Yeah. So I think for recruiters there are two major challenges. One is definitely the assessment of candidates in general. So I think as a recruiter, you're not familiar with how the whole education system works abroad in India, for instance, right? So it's very difficult to assess if a candidate has a good profile, if the qualifications the candidate has are a good match or not, because you're probably not familiar with the background. So I would say the whole assessment and selection is something challenging in the beginning. And then the other part is definitely once you've found a candidate, it's again the same thing as for the candidates. The whole visa stuff and paperwork is very time consuming. And I can see, like, the companies I work with are often really, really frustrated, because the minute they find a candidate, they often want this candidate to be on board as soon as possible, but then the visa process probably takes several months. So that's that's just really challenging, because if from a company perspective or a recruiter's perspective, if you're willing to hire a candidate who still has to relocate, that means that you really have a high need for this specific candidate. Otherwise, it would probably be easier to hire someone locally, right? So that usually means that there's a high need and it's urgent, and that's just something which cannot be fulfilled when we look at current processes. Yeah,
I can imagine, and it's also something that is not necessarily in the hands of the companies, neither of the job seeker, of the applicant or the companies, of course, because now, particularly in the times of pandemic, and what are the challenges besides, I would say, the obvious now in the times of the pandemic? What are the main challenges for both the recruiters, for the companies, but also the applicants there, in your eyes?
Yeah. You mean apart from the whole visa part and paperwork and so on?
So that it takes longer, that we can't travel, but the other challenges that go along with it.
Yeah. So in this pandemic right now, I've seen that a lot of companies try to have more remote work in place and so on. And then, of course, that's also good because it's a bit more of a flexible work setup, so new solutions coming up. But it also, for teams which are very, very international, it's also sometimes very challenging in terms of communication, because you work with colleagues that you have never met before, that come from a completely different background. And that's, I think, irrespective of the nationality. That's not just something that's related to India and Germany, but also other backgrounds, right? So I've seen that this becomes a bit more challenging, because if you sit in one office, it's easier to network and get to know each other, and then it's easier to manage projects together and so on, right? So I think that's something I do see quite often, that because networking has become more difficult, the whole aspect of collaborating and working together has also become a bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine also the entire onboarding and everything, right? To make the candidate feel comfortable, make them feel part of the company, and create this culture. Or it is much more difficult. And since now the candidate is also, or the candidates really sought after, that means also you want to retain them, right? So you want to make sure that that person is happy and content at the position. I can also imagine that it is quite a challenge there. So what can be done to overcome this? What can be done to try to get them on board, make them feel comfortable? What are solutions also to bridge it? Do you have a solution for that also at Mitra? What do you do?
So we at Mitra, we mainly focus on the candidate side. So we do have candidates in their relocation process. So we already start in the application phase. So we coach people, we support them with their job search and so on. But we also help with the whole relocation. So and then with them getting started here in Berlin, we try to connect people so that they have a better network. So I think, getting an agency to help you, I think is definitely a very good starting point. I think what can also be done from a company side is really to make an effort to have a good onboarding process, like you mentioned earlier, that it's a bit challenging because, you don't meet each other. That also means that you're not really familiar with how processes work. You don't just come across a colleague when you walk through the office and so on. And I think for that, that's something companies can definitely do to make sure that they maybe have, some activities where you get to meet colleagues from other departments. So I know companies that also do virtual lunch breaks where you don't just meet with the whole team, but maybe also in one-on-one meetings that have like a random schedule, so you don't just interact with your colleagues that are working in your department, but also people from other departments. So I think this kind of stuff is very helpful. And regarding onboarding, the other part that companies can definitely also do, irrespective of location, is to give a bit of an overview when candidates start, like how things work here. How does sick leave work? What do you have to do when you want to take the vacation? How does the whole salary payment work? What kind of data do they need from you, and so on? So a proper onboarding, which I know a lot of companies do, but they often don't do that in the same in such a detailed way, because for a candidate from Germany, it's natural, like they will know how everything works with insurance and so on. So it's good to provide a bit more information than usual.
Particularly when you all of a sudden have to pay a mandatory share of your salary for health insurance, right? And there's no way out.
Yes.
Great. So that regards the communication and the processes. So we wanted to talk about paperwork also. Paperwork. What can be done to speed things up also in the entire process?
So regarding paperwork, I think the best thing that can be done to speed things up is to work with an agency. And I'm not just saying that because it's also something we do. So we work with Localize, for instance, but I can really say that because it's it's also an effort for the company. It costs them money, right? If they need a resource that takes care of paperwork. So it's the best thing, to be done is to really hire an agent to get the whole visa stuff done, from my point of view, because agencies often have a direct link to the authorities here in Germany. So it's often faster. It's just a faster process, and also there's more experience with the strategies. So sometimes you have a choice of which exact kind of visa you want to apply for, and I think there's just more experience with that. Or there are also differences depending on which city you go to and so on. So you never know what to expect, and for that it's really helpful to have a professional that's helping with that. So I think that's the main aspect from my point of view. And another thing is to take a look at these things before starting a hiring process. So I also often get candidates who have gone through the whole selection process, and then the company and the candidate realize that the salary level is not sufficient for a visa, or the degree is not recognized, or something else. So for that, I think it helps to maybe do a quick check at the beginning, and just be aware of the minimum criteria you need to be successful with the paperwork. That saves a lot of time. Yeah.
Okay, but but probably the candidates assume the companies, the employers would be looking into that. But I'm also surprised to hear that. So apparently that's not always the case.
I think that's not always the case. Yeah, and I don't want to blame the companies for that, because they just have a different priority. They just look at the skills mainly. And I think the more they hire, the more experienced they are with this stuff. But particularly small companies are often not familiar with that. If you have an early stage startup which just completed the first round of funding and needs to hire developers now, then you often don't have someone who's really familiar with these processes. And even for more advanced startups, I have seen many cases where there's still a lot of confusion happening. And I don't really blame the recruiters for that. It's just not their main focus. I mean, they are focused on getting people on board who have the best skills for the company that they are recruiting for. And unfortunately, the visa process is sometimes not in line with that. So it's for candidates, I think it's just helpful to know that the companies are not always aware of visa processes. So, and then it's easy to
very helpful information.
check.
And are there certain websites or certain tools that you would recommend to the candidates as well to collect some information, or should they directly reach out to agents?
Yeah, so I would definitely recommend, of course, to take a look at our Mitra website. We do provide information on the most important tools and stuff. And then definitely, I think there's the Make It in Germany website, which I think is run by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, if I'm not mistaken. So it's an official website, and it has a great visa quick check, which you can use. So you just, mention what kind of nationality and degree you have and so on. And then it will give you a first kind of high-level information on the kind of visa type you could go for. So that's, I think, a very, very helpful website. Of course, official German authorities also provide information, but I've seen that it's sometimes a bit confusing or difficult to find your way around this, the stuff you find there. So I would say Make It in Germany is always the easiest starting point to figure out if you need a visa and what kind of visa you probably need. And then once you want to dig deeper, you can take a look at the Mitra website. You can take a look at a few blogs. So we also have a list of resources, because we don't go really deeply into visa processes, but there's a list of resources for other blogs which provide more information on how to use ANA-BIN and figure out your recognition status and so on. So I think you can find everything online.
Okay, so these things would be very helpful to do from the candidate's end, but
Yes.
the other thing from the from the visa end, for example, it's good for the candidate to know that not all the companies are fully aware of all the regulations from third country applicants.
Yeah.
But then eventually that would be the responsibility of the employer, right? Or is it usually the applicant's job or the to apply for the visa?
So usually it's the applicant who has to apply for the visa. So it's but the company also has to provide paperwork for that. So you need a work contract, for instance, and that's something that companies sometimes are not aware of, because they often ask for a visa or work permit before hiring a candidate, but you need a signed contract to apply for your visa. So it's a kind of vicious circle. Yeah, that's part of the paperwork that is needed from the company side. And then, yeah, they also have to provide some more information on the job and so on. So it's, yeah, I think both parts can participate in that. Yeah.
Okay, so and then does it make sense to reach out to a nationwide like someone like an agent that is active all over Germany, or also the local Wirtschaftsförderung, the local business support agencies? Most of them also have their own desks to support on this, so that they're also part of the GINSEP network, for example. In Düsseldorf, they're really active to support on this, but I also know that from Bavaria. So usually when I have individual cases, I always refer and connect them to the local business desk as well, because they also support some hand holding, right? So is that something one should also look into simultaneously, or should one rather go for one-stop shop nationwide agent?
I think that depends on the company and the company's needs, but I think reaching out to these help desks is always a good idea. I know also I've seen that Berlin, like the city of Berlin and Berlin Partner, they've also I think just launched a new kind of help desk, which tries to kind of integrate the whole process, and you just have one point of contact. I haven't tried it out yet, but I think that's a great initiative. So it's definitely helpful to reach out to these help desks as well. And I also know like several startups who make use of that here in Berlin, in particular, like when they have questions, they just reach out to this Berlin business partners, and they do get answers. So I think that's always a good thing to do. And then it really depends, like if you have a high volume of candidates, you know, that you're hiring from abroad, or if you have a really, really high urgency, then it's good to go for an agent. So it depends. But if you're just getting started and you need more information, then I think it's very good to work with these help desks. I mean, I think they're doing a good job. So, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Well, it's important to know also for the outsider, for the candidates, that Germany is decentralized, right? So you always have local authorities. You might have visa regulations that count for the entire country, but still you have local authorities that are in charge and support you on also local matters. Wonderful. Super interesting, Jana. It's been a pleasure.